The emergence of chord progressions was to be crucial to the development of harmony. In the early 1500s, we see for the first time in printed music the evidence of repeated, durable chord progressions. Dance music was extremely fashionable in the courts of Europe. What seemed to work best was music with strong chord patterns. Two of these became so widespread that they were given the names Passamezzo Antico and Passamezzo Moderno. Both were based on the journey from the tonic to the dominant and back again.
The Passamezzo Antico pattern goes like this. That's the halfway point at the dominant, and then we head home again. All sorts of melodies would fit onto that pattern, and you can hear the Passamezzo Antico in action in that most famous of 16th century songs, Greensleeves. Alas, my love, you do me wrong to cast me out discourteously, for I have loved...
The stately Passamezzo Antico was popular enough, but its successor, the Passamezzo Moderno, was the really big hit. It went on to become the most widely used chord sequence of all time. 500 years after it was first written down, its influence can still be heard.
Just let me hear some of that rock and roll music, any old way you choose it. Got a backbeat, you can't lose it.
What was the secret of its success? You see, whereas the Passamezzo Antico was in a sombre minor mood, the Moderno was in a sunny major mood. It's a thoroughly organic, all-natural chord progression. It also introduces a third important chord after the tonic and the dominant, the imaginatively titled subdominant. The subdominant was the chord we heard in the second line of Silent Night. Round yon virgin mother and child. And here's a more recent song with exactly the same chord progression. I found my thrill on Blueberry Hill, on Blueberry Hill.
When I found you.
Yes, even Blueberry Hill follows the exact pattern of a Passamezzo Moderno.
On Blueberry Hill.
The whole of the Moderno's pattern uses only these three chords, the tonic, the dominant and the subdominant. The subdominant muscled itself into the picture by acting as a kind of mirror image to the dominant, with the tonic sitting in the middle as a fulcrum.
You'll see that this note, C, is 5 white notes lower than the dominant, G, and 5 white notes higher than the subdominant, F. It sits in the middle, holding the balance of power.
These three chords, the tonic, the dominant and the subdominant, were to become so crucial and so ubiquitous in the centuries that followed that they were known collectively as the primary triads. They're the equivalent of the primary colours in art. Great swathes of Western music rely almost exclusively on the primary triads, from Vivaldi to Elvis.
Well, it's 1 for the money, 2 for the show, 3 to get ready. Now go, cat, go, but don't you step on my blue suede shoe.
So far, we've been talking about harmony as something that's pleasing on the ear, and that's how things were up until the 17th century, when a new and rather naughty idea crept into harmony: discord.
Discord, or dissonance, is where there is a deliberate collision of notes that aren't supposed to fit together, when they belong to the wrong triads, for instance. The issue of dissonance has been something of a battlefield over the centuries. For a start, no one's been totally sure which collisions qualify as a dissonance and which don't. In medieval times, almost everything was classified as a dissonance, whereas by the end of the 19th century, almost nothing was. It has a lot to do, of course, with our ears becoming accustomed to unfamiliar sounds.
If you'd played Jimi Hendrix's Purple Haze to anyone in the Middle Ages, they'd have probably passed out. And yet to our ears it doesn't sound particularly shocking because we've grown used to it. In fact, in terms of pure dissonance, clashing notes, Purple Haze has hardly any at all.
It begins with a collision of two notes that was considered in the Middle Ages such a horrible dissonance that the church authorities called it the devil in music. But even this devilish clash by Bach's time, around 1700, was considered more or less harmless. And by Wagner and Tchaikovsky's time, the Romantic era, it was meat and veg to all composers. So is the concept of dissonance gradually dying out then as we get used to everything? The answer is we seem to be getting used to some dissonance, but not all of it. There are pieces of classical music that were written ages ago that still sound discordant and unnerving no matter how many times you hear them. Take this piece by the French composer Pierre Boulez, written half a century ago.
This is the sort of dissonance that popular music avoids like the plague. In the right hands, though, the subtle use of dissonance is one of music's great pleasures, because the point is that dissonance can be cleverly used and cleverly disguised. In the days when the church had great power over what people did, including what composers composed, dissonance was frowned upon or even banned. So it became a kind of game for composers to get around the rules by slipping in cunningly disguised dissonances to spice up their music. They found loopholes in the law and exploited them vigorously. One such get-out-of-jail-free card was a trick known as passing notes. Passing notes are like passengers in transit at airports. Because they're only passing through a country, not staying in it, they're outside customs control and not governed by the same laws and restrictions as the people who are entering the country in earnest. So naughty notes can be put into chords as long as they're clearly passing through and on their way to the next one. This is what I mean. You wouldn't normally expect to hear this note with this chord, because it sounds so dissonant. In fact, it's the kind of tooth-grating clash that a devout Christian composer like J.S. Bach shouldn't have been able to get away with, not in 1700 anyway. But because the inner voices of this German hymn we're about to hear are passing through on their way towards other notes, when they collide, the dissonance is allowed. Here's the original. See if you can spot that clashing chord. In the third line, when the choir sing, Zu dir schreien wir aus Herzens Begehr. Passing notes didn't die out as the rules on dissonance relaxed over the centuries. It's just that our ears have become accustomed to correcting the dissonance in our heads automatically. Or we got to like it through familiarity. You wouldn't leap to harmonize this note with this unsympathetic chord, unless you were treating it as a passing note on its way down the scale to here. Or unless you were some kind of rebel. Getting around the authorities by using passing notes was one trick. Another was a technique known as suspension. If passing notes were travellers in transit, suspended notes were passengers who'd missed their flight altogether and were sitting in the departure lounge waiting to be transferred to the next one. Suspended notes are a form of dissonance we all adore. Here's a song that begins with a whole series of them. Well, I can't forget this evening and your face as you were leaving. Well, I guess that's just the way the story goes. You always smile, but in your eyes your sorrow shows. Yes, it shows. Suspending a note means letting it linger over the territory of a chord to which it doesn't really belong, creating a delicious sense of tension by doing so. In Without You, the melody is almost entirely made up of suspensions. So in the first phrase, well, I can't forget this evening, the tune is being held over a chord to which it doesn't belong. It wants to resolve to here. Similarly, in the second phrase, and your face as you were leaving, the same thing's happening. Without all these lingering suspensions, the verse would sound something like this. Well, I can't forget this evening and your face as you were leaving. Well, I guess that's just the way the story goes. I mean, it's sweet, but it's a bit clunky, basically. And the way that a suspension gets its kicks is by holding on for as long as possible and then shifting down to the correct note at the last minute.
This evening, or your face as you were leaving, but I guess that's just the way the story goes. You always smile, but in your eyes your sorrow shows. Yes, it shows.
Suspended notes aren't just the domain of broken-hearted pop divas either. Suspensions were a way for Baroque and Renaissance composers to slip dissonance into their pieces, especially if they were trying to evoke feelings of pain, unease, or passion. One such composer was Antonio Lotti, who in his Crucifixus managed to squeeze 49 consecutive suspensions into a piece lasting just 41 bars.